The reflex analyzer had tested 52,000 cadets across 200 species over 3 centuries. It had never once returned an error. Until now. Commander Vel stood on the observation deck with 2 of his 4 arms folded behind his back, the other 2 gripping a tablet whose screen pulsed with contradictory data. His secondary eyes tracked the readouts while his primary pair fixed on the chamber below, where a single human cadet waited inside a sphere of humming light. "Run it again," Vel said. The technician, a Morale whose glossy carapace reflected the sterile blue of the lab, clicked her mandibles in restrained frustration. "Commander, we've run it 17 times. The analyzer's diagnostics are clean. The fault isn't the machine. Then the parameters are broken," Vel replied evenly. Again. Below, Cadet Aria Reeves shifted her weight, arms loose, expression calm. No fear, no tension. Just a human standing as if waiting for an elevator. The data tag on Vel's tablet listed her as 23 years old. Origin World Terra. Species classification Homo sapiens. The newest addition to the Galactic Academy system. "Begin sequence," Vel ordered. The chamber dimmed. 10,000 holographic sensors activated, forming a network of potential threats. Light bursts, sound pulses, kinetic cues. The analyzer delivered a randomized visual stimulus. A sudden flash of red directly before the cadet's eyes. Reeves moved before it appeared. The response time registered 41 milliseconds. "Again," Vel said. A blue light, followed by an audio cue. She reacted before the sound, again. By the 5th run, Vel stopped speaking. The technician kept activating tests, her antennae trembling. Each result landed faster than the previous one, each statistically impossible. On the 17th trial, the data stream froze. The analyzer's internal diagnostics flagged a paradox. Response preceding stimulus confirmation. The Morale turned slowly. "Commander, the analyzer says she's responding before the event exists." Vel's voice came out low. "That is not possible." The technician glanced down at the chamber. And yet there it is. Inside, Reeves raised her head. Through the one-way glass, she couldn't see them, but she looked straight toward the observation deck anyway. Her mouth quirked upward. "Activate comm channel," Vel said. Static clicked, then her voice came through casual and clear. "You guys done yet? My squad's got formation drills. One more test, Cadet Reeves." She rolled her shoulders. "Sure thing." The analyzer cycled through a high-complexity sequence. 55 variable stimuli layered in visual, auditory, and kinetic patterns. The program was designed to overwhelm most cadets within 4 minutes. Reeves finished in 90 seconds. Not a single error. Vel's secondary eyes narrowed. "Technician, confirm accuracy." "It's perfect," the Morale whispered. "Every strike, every defense, predictive movement across random sequences." "Commander, she's not reacting. She's anticipating." Vel toggled the comm again. "Cadet Reeves, what are you doing differently this time?" Her tone carried the faintest trace of amusement. "Just following the pattern, sir." "There is no pattern. The test is randomized." "Not really. You're pulling the threats from tactical logic, right? Visuals come in predictable arcs. Once you know where A and B appear, C's gotta show up in the upper right quadrant. It's the only place that makes sense." Vel's throat plates flexed. "You're predicting random stimuli?" "Not random, Commander. Just badly shuffled." She smiled again, faint but unmistakable. Was that fast enough? The observation deck fell silent. Even the environmental hum seemed to pause. Instructor Kresh arrived moments later, tall and angular, her chitin shimmering under the cold lights. "I heard the analyzer crashed," she said, voice carrying the clipped rhythm of someone who expected disappointment. "What did the human do, stand still until it gave up?" Vel gestured at the data feed. She exceeded sensor limits. 41 milliseconds average. Once at 38, Kresh blinked her secondary eyes. "That's faster than the machine's signal propagation rate." "Yes, then either she's lying or the analyzer is." Vel pointed toward the chamber. Reeves was standing still, humming softly. "The analyzer has never lied." Kresh watched the human for a long moment. "Then perhaps it finally met something honest enough to break it." Vel didn't reply. His gaze stayed on the cadet. There was no visible arrogance in her face, just composure, the kind born from experience, not training. Kresh folded 2 limbs. Do you know what her world's hazard index is? 6.2. A garden world by classification. Kresh's mandibles flexed in disbelief. A garden world with atmospheric storms strong enough to shatter steel, oceans that try to drown continents, and predators that hunt in coordinated packs. Commander, their planet should have killed them long before they learned to build ships. Vel turned slightly. Yet it didn't, Kresh's eyes gleamed. Maybe that's what the analyzer's detecting. Not reflex, but expectation. When every shadow might kill you, you stop waiting for proof it will. Down in the chamber, Reeves tilted her head again, that same calm half-smile crossing her face. She couldn't possibly hear them, yet it felt like she could. Vel said quietly, "Run diagnostics on all human cadets. I want every one of them retested before dawn." The technician hesitated. "That will override current training schedules." "Override them," Vel said. "I want to know if this is anomaly or species standard." The technician's antennae folded tight. "Understood, Commander." Vel cut the comm channel. The chamber's lights dimmed, releasing the cadet. She stepped out, wiping a bead of sweat from her brow. When she glanced up again, it wasn't curiosity in her expression. It was recognition. As she left, Kresh exhaled a sound that might have been a laugh. "Tell me, Commander, what will you do if they all test like that?" Vel looked down at the now silent analyzer. "Then I'll start asking what kind of world breeds soldiers faster than machines can think." The lights flickered once before stabilizing, as though the analyzer itself needed a moment to recover. Outside, the training compound stretched beneath the Academy's transparent dome. Rings of dormitories, sparring halls, and simulation grids glowing under artificial daylight. Distant cadets marched in formation, unaware that history had just shifted in the chamber above them. Vel watched Reeves rejoin her unit. She moved through the crowd without urgency. A single human shape among dozens of alien silhouettes. Feathered, scaled, luminous, metallic. But something about her made the others instinctively step aside. Kresh followed his gaze. "She doesn't stand out," she observed. "Not in strength, not in size." "No," Vel said. "That's what makes it worse." "Worse? If she were extraordinary, we could explain it. But if this is what average looks like..." Kresh finished for him. "Then we've been measuring the wrong thing." Vel's eyes lingered on Reeves until she disappeared into the barracks. "Prepare the chambers. Tonight we test the rest." Kresh nodded once, mandibles clicking softly. "And if the machines fail again?" Vel's voice was barely above a whisper. "Then we stop blaming the machines." The deck lights dimmed as the analyzer powered down. Its final reading frozen on the main display. Reaction time, 0.041 seconds. Status, undefined. For the first time in its history, the most advanced testing system in the galaxy had no answer. And the human walked away smiling. The lights of the Academy's diagnostics wing burned through the night. Every monitor, every data channel, every mind in the room was locked on one impossible truth. The analyzer had not failed. Commander Vel stood motionless at the center of the observation bay. 4 hands occupied, one holding a tablet, one scrolling through graphs, one clasped behind his back, and one pinching the ridge of his snout as if pressure could force sense into chaos. Behind him, the chamber's steady hum carried a new note: unease. 6 human cadets now stood in 6 testing pods. The rest were being escorted down by security. Every other training program across the facility had been frozen under priority override. Instructor Kresh entered, her insectoid limbs moving with precise rhythm. "You've turned the entire academy into a laboratory," she said. "I want data, not rumors," Vel replied. "Rumors are already faster than your orders." Kresh's voice clicked softly. Half the barracks knows something broke. Something didn't break. Vel lifted the tablet and rotated it toward her. "Something is rewriting the scale." Kresh leaned close. The readings displayed identical anomalies across every human tested. 42 milliseconds, 40:39. She looked up. "These are consistent." "Exactly," Vel's tone hardened. "Consistency across individuals means design, not error." "Then we need to call xenoneurology," she said. "They're already on their way." The door hissed open. Dr. Neal arrived, her elongated form wrapped in a sterile field cloak. Her sensory fronds twitched at the air, tasting chemical traces of stress. This room smells like panic, she said softly. Vel didn't argue. Doctor, your analyzer is recording reflexes faster than its own signal latency. Neil moved toward the console, her fronds flicking through data like fingertips on a keyboard. I designed these systems. If they're reporting that, they're not wrong. The humans are. Clarify, Kresh said. The analyzer doesn't measure speed. It measures sequence. Stimulus, recognition, motor response. Humans are acting before recognition completes. So they're guessing. Neil's fronds rippled. No guessing would produce variance. This is precision. They're responding correctly before the brain finishes acknowledging threat. Vel's secondary eyes blinked. Instinct? Something deeper. Conditioned anticipation. Neil paused, scanning a chart. I've seen similar micro-patterns in predatory species, but never sustained at this speed. Kresh's mandibles clicked once, the equivalent of a curse. You're saying they evolved to live in prediction? Neil looked at her. I'm saying they evolved in fear. Across the room, one of the pods beeped. A cadet stepped out. Private Okafor, tall, broad-shouldered, face calm as stone. Report, Vel ordered. Okafor saluted with casual ease. Finished, Commander. Same results as before. Did you feel any difference this time? He shrugged. No, sir. Just reacted. It's like knowing the punchline before the joke. Neil glanced up. And when you say reacted, describe the sensation. Okafor hesitated, searching for the right words. Feels like déjà vu, I guess. Like I already saw it happen once in my head. I just move before it hits me. Neil whispered to Vel. Pre-activation. Neural projection of probabilistic outcomes. They're not faster, they're ahead. Is that biologically possible? Vel asked. Neil stared at him. On most worlds? No, on theirs. I'm starting to wonder. Kresh folded two limbs, thoughtful. Maybe the environment trained their minds to never stop predicting. Constant threat conditioning. Okafor frowned. You're making it sound dramatic. Earth's not that bad. Neil looked at him, curious. How would you describe it? Depends where you're born, he said. We've got floods, storms, fires, sometimes earthquakes. You learn to pay attention. Ignore the little stuff and you get hurt, Kresh muttered. Pay attention or die, Vel gestured toward the hallway. Dismissed, Cadet. When the door closed, silence settled again. The only sound was the low murmur of the analyzer cycling another test. Neil exhaled through her fronds. Commander, if all 16 humans produce identical readings, your academy will need to rebuild its baseline metrics. Explain. Every evaluation, reflexes, endurance, combat simulations, was designed around interspecies averages. If humans are this far outside the curve, the standards themselves are obsolete. Vel stared at the data long enough for his secondary eyes to lose focus. We have 3 centuries of established doctrine built on those standards. Kresh's mandibles twitched. Doctrine doesn't survive facts, Neil straightened. You're not grasping the scale of this discovery. Their neural design isn't superior, it's desperate. Constant vigilance written into biology. I want full scans, blood chemistry, endocrine mapping. Do it, Vel said. As Neil departed, Kresh followed him to the observation window. 6 humans waited in the pods below, calm and expressionless. No arrogance, no visible tension, just quiet readiness. They look harmless, Kresh murmured. Vel's upper hands tightened behind his back. Harmless things don't make machines stutter. Kresh tilted her head. Suppose this isn't talent but trauma. Species evolved under constant assault might have normalized hyper-awareness. You can't out-train that. Vel turned toward her. Then we need to understand it. Hours later, the testing cycles ended. Data streams flooded into central storage, crashing secondary servers twice. Vel remained at his post. Around him, the observation deck emptied, leaving only the hum of cooling systems and the faint rhythm of his own breathing. Dr. Neil returned near dawn, her fronds twitching from fatigue. I have preliminary findings, she said. Vel motioned for her to continue. Human neural pathways show unusually high cross-synaptic density in the motor cortex, 5% higher than any known species. They process sensory input through redundant circuits, which allows parallel prediction. Meaning they see threats before acknowledging them. Their brains model likely outcomes constantly, even at rest. Kresh, now leaning against the glass, said, So they're not reacting to reality. They're responding to probability. Neil nodded. Exactly, Vel frowned. That implies they live anticipating harm. Neil's fronds curled inward. Yes, their world conditioned them for that. You read the planetary file? Vel nodded. Garden world classification, hazard index 6.2. Recalculate that using our current parameters, Neil said. Earth isn't a garden. It's a crucible. Kresh exhaled sharply. Then every human we've trained has been living on low alert compared to home. Correct, Neil said. And even here, in safety, their systems remain active. Their resting state is what we'd call combat readiness. Vel absorbed the words quietly. What does that mean for our cadets? It means they aren't faster because of superior biology, Neil said softly. They're faster because they never learned how to relax. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the analyzer seemed louder, like a heartbeat. Finally, Kresh said, Commander, if that's true, this academy may need to adapt to them, not the other way around. Vel turned toward the viewport again. Reeves was visible in the corridor below, laughing with another human, her posture loose, carefree. There was no sign of tension, no sign of the internal storm Neil described. He said quietly, She doesn't look like someone who can't relax. Neil's fronds brushed against his shoulder, in a gesture that, among her kind, meant pity. That's the terrifying part. They've turned vigilance into comfort. Kresh looked between them, and if this vigilance can be taught, Vel finished for her. Then we're looking at the next stage of warfare. A silence settled again, heavy and thinking. Finally, Vel issued the order that would ripple through every military academy in the sector. Test them all. Every human on base, and this time don't measure against the machine, measure against the rest of us. Outside, the first light of dawn struck the dome of the academy, glinting off steel and glass. Below, the humans walked easily among the other species, unarmed, unassuming, unaware that by simply being themselves, they had shaken an empire's confidence in its own strength. Inside the control bay, the analyzer powered down for maintenance. Its final log entry read only 2 words, test inconclusive. But Vel knew better. The test wasn't inconclusive. It had simply reached its limit. Rumors travel faster than light inside a closed academy. By morning, every corridor buzzed with whispers about the humans, the ones who had broken the analyzer. Cadet Vor, a Peltherin with scales that shifted colors in sync with emotion, sat in the barracks lounge watching the discussion threads on her hollow tablet spiral out of control. Hundreds of cadets, dozens of species, all debating the same question. How could a human react before a machine did? Her scales flickered between anxious blue and confused amber as she scrolled through the latest leak. 17 perfect runs, she murmured. Reaction times below measurable threshold. That can't be right. Across the room, her bunkmate Tresh, a scent-based communicator who'd adapted awkwardly to verbal speech, tilted her head. Data came from command records. 4 confirmations. It's real. 4's scales turned dull gray. Then it's impossible. Impossible things, Tresh said, tend to happen around humans lately. The barracks doors hissed open. A trio of human cadets entered, Reeves among them, laughing quietly about something trivial. The room stilled. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Every pair of alien eyes followed the humans as they crossed to their bunks. Vor whispered, They don't even look different. Reeves glanced up, sensing the weight of a dozen stares. Morning, she said easily. What did we miss? Tresh forced a smile, her translator catching the tone halfway between curiosity and fear. Only the part where your species broke our science. Reeves raised a brow. That again? I didn't break anything. The machine just couldn't keep up. Her casual tone made the others flinch. She noticed, sighed softly, and turned away, stretching before heading toward the mess hall. When she was gone, Vor exhaled. She said it like it's nothing. Maybe it is nothing to them, Tresh replied. That's the part that scares me. In the mess hall, silence followed the humans wherever they sat. Trays clattered. Conversations resumed only after they left. Commander Vel observed from the upper balcony, his gaze following Reeves as she joined her squad mates. Her body language was relaxed, utterly at ease. No sign she realized she'd become a subject of study. Instructor Kresh approached him. The social equilibrium is collapsing. she said. Vel didn't look away. Fear spreads faster than truth. And truth? That depends on what we decide it is. Kresh folded two of her limbs. You've read Neil's neurological report? Twice. Then you know what it means, Vel nodded slowly. A species whose baseline state is mild combat readiness. Always alert, never still. Kresh's antennae twitched. How do you train alongside something like that without becoming it? Vel finally turned toward her. That's what we're going to find out. The next morning, the Academy initiated mixed-species reflex drills. 1 human per unit, each assigned as an equal participant. Reeves's squad formed inside Simulation Room Theta. 8 cadets representing 5 worlds. A faint tension hung in the air, thick enough to feel through the ventilation currents. Standard coordination run, barked the instructor. 30 threats, randomized vectors. Work as a unit. Vor found herself beside Reeves, heart thudding in sync with the countdown timer. 3, 2, 1. The lights flared. Projected targets erupted from all directions. Blades, flashes, sonic bursts. Reeves moved instantly, intercepting, countering, flowing through the chaos like water through stone. Every move she made shifted the rhythm of the group, their reactions syncing to her pace whether they meant to or not. By the end of the run, the simulation's kill zone readouts displayed 0 fatalities. No squad had ever achieved that before. The room went silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. Vor blinked at the result. How did you know where they'd appear? Reeves adjusted her wrist guard. Didn't know, just saw the setup. Once you've seen a few dozen ambushes, you start to recognize patterns. Tresh released a faint pheromone pulse that her translator rendered as disbelief. There were no patterns. Reeves smiled faintly. Everything has patterns. You just haven't learned how to see them yet. Hours later, in the staff observation lounge, Vel replayed the drill footage for Kresh and Dr. Neil. The recording slowed to frame-by-frame clarity. Reeves's eyes moved milliseconds before each threat materialized. Neil leaned forward. Look at the gaze tracking. She's processing possibilities in parallel. It's not instinct, it's computation. Kresh's mandibles clicked softly. They do this naturally? Apparently. Neil's fronds trembled. When your world kills you for hesitation, you stop hesitating. Vel watched the footage loop again, the same impossible grace repeating. You're suggesting humans evolved to treat danger as predictable. Not predictable, Neil said. Inevitable. Kresh crossed her limbs. Then our entire concept of training is obsolete. We teach response. They live in readiness, Vel's secondary eyes narrowed. And yet they think nothing of it. They can't, Neil said quietly. If they ever realized how unnatural it is, they'd break. That night, the Academy dorms pulsed with quiet paranoia. Aliens whispered theories into the dark. Genetic manipulation, machine integration, divine interference. None felt adequate. In one of the human quarters, Reeves sat at her bunk, staring at the faint reflection on her data pad. Across from her, Okafor tossed a ball into the air, catching it every time without looking. You hear what they're saying about us? She asked. Okafor shrugged. That we're freaks? Sure, they just need time. Feels weird, though. She looked down at her hands. Back home, nobody thought twice about reflex training. Here it's a scandal, he grinned. Different scale of normal. Yeah, she paused. You ever think maybe we are different? He caught the ball, squeezed it once and set it aside. Different doesn't mean wrong. Before she could reply, a tone echoed through the barracks. Commander Vel's voice filled the intercom. All human cadets report to the assembly hall at 0600. Compulsory briefing. Attendance mandatory, Okafor groaned. That sounds fun. Reeves exhaled, gaze drifting to the ceiling. Maybe they finally figured out what to do with us. 600 came with silence heavy enough to hear heartbeats. 16 human cadets stood on the assembly platform. Facing them, Commander Vel, Kresh, Dr. Neil, and an audience of 200 alien cadets seated in tense rows. Vel's voice carried through the hall. This academy was founded to train soldiers from every species under one standard. That standard no longer applies. He gestured toward the humans. Our newest recruits have exposed a flaw in that standard. Not by superiority, but by difference. Their world taught them vigilance. Ours taught complacency. From this day, new metrics will be set using cross-species data. Training will adapt. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Vel continued. We will not fear what we do not understand. We will learn from it, Crash stepped forward. Human cadets, you will assist in calibration exercises. Your presence is no longer anomaly. It is instruction. The humans exchanged uncertain glances. Reeves raised her hand. Permission to speak, Commander? Granted. She looked across the crowd. We didn't mean to change anything. We just did what we were trained to do, Vel met her gaze. Sometimes doing what you've always done is what changes everything. A low murmur of acknowledgement moved through the hall, half respect, half apprehension. Later, as the cadets filed out, Crash watched Vel from the back of the stage. You think this will calm them? Vel shook his head. No, but it will focus them. Fear with purpose becomes discipline. And the humans? He considered that. They'll adapt faster than anyone. Crash gave a thin smile. That's what worries me. Outside, dawn broke over the Academy dome, casting long shadows over the marching grounds. The humans walked among the others now, uniforms blending, movements too smooth to notice until you looked closely. They didn't look like predators. They just looked prepared. The sparring arena pulsed with low light and anticipation. Dozens of cadets lined the upper balconies, leaning forward against the safety rails, whispering across species lines. Word had spread faster than any official announcement. The humans were fighting today. Instructor Crash stood at the center platform, her segmented frame tall under the glow panels. Observation protocols active, she announced. Her voice carried the precision of a blade. No interference. No recording. What you see remains here. Commander Vel joined her, arms folded behind his back. We're not here for spectacle, he said quietly. Crash's antennae twitched in mild amusement. Then we should have closed the doors. Below, two figures stepped onto the combat floor. Lieutenant Arya Reeves and Cadet Thex, a four-armed Krenathi built from muscle and armor plate. Thex towered over the human by nearly half a meter, his upper limbs flexing as he tested his reach. Crash addressed the crowd. Controlled match. No lethal force. Objective. Efficiency, precision, reaction, discipline. Thex cracked his upper knuckles, four eyes narrowing. I've heard enough about your miracle reflexes, human, he said. Let's see if they exist outside machines. Reeves smiled faintly. Sure, try not to blink. A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the stands. Then silence. The signal chime sounded. Thex moved first, fast, deliberate, a blur of four strikes converging from different angles. Reeves slid aside, fluid as water, letting the first arm sweep past, deflecting the second with a forearm block that looked effortless. She pivoted once, dropped her center of gravity, and the third and fourth strikes cut through empty air. Before Thex could reset, her hand tapped twice against the plating on his abdomen. Non-lethal strike confirmed. Point, human, Crash said, her tone unreadable. Thex bared his mandibles. Again, the signal flashed a second time. He attacked harder, unpredictable combinations, feints, an overhead slam meant to crush. Reeves didn't retreat. She moved forward, under his guard, her motion too efficient to seem real. A twist, a sweep, and the massive cadet hit the mat with a thud that echoed off the steel walls. The hall erupted in gasps. Vel's upper hands tightened behind his back. She's controlling the exchange, Crash nodded slowly. She's teaching him mid-fight. On the floor, Thex rose, breathing hard. You're pulling your hits when of course I am, Reeves said. You asked for a spar, not a funeral. Laughter broke out, sharp and nervous. Full speed, Thex demanded. Crash raised a limb. Cadet, full speed, he repeated. No contact. Vel looked at Crash. Let him. The command tone silenced any objection. Reeves exhaled once, rolled her shoulders and nodded. Fine, watch carefully. The arena lights dimmed to combat mode. Sensors along the walls activated, painting the air in faint holographic lines that tracked velocity and movement vectors. At the signal, Reeves moved. To most of the onlookers, it looked like a glitch in perception. 1 second she stood still. The next, she was already behind Thex, body twisting through invisible pathways. Every motion chained seamlessly to the next. Strike, pivot, evade, recover. Too fluid to follow. Thex turned, every limb defensive, but the motion was too late. Reeves's projected vector trail filled the space around him like an afterimage storm. When she stopped, the room remained frozen. Cresh's secondary eyes flicked through the recorded data feed. That sequence should be impossible, she murmured. No gaps between actions. No telegraph. Vel's voice was low. How many strikes? 17. And contact? 0. Not even displaced air pressure beyond safe threshold. Down on the floor, Reeves stood straight, breathing evenly. Satisfied? Thex's mandibles shifted, the Krenathi equivalent of awe. You could have killed me 17 times. 18, Reeves corrected gently. You left your thorax open when you turned. Thex lowered his head. Acknowledged. Kresh looked toward Vel. You realize what this means? Vel's tone carried no triumph. Yes, it means we've been teaching delay and calling it discipline. Hours later, the sparring hall was empty except for Vel, Kresh, and Reeves. The floor still bore faint scuff marks from the match. You understand the consequences of what you just demonstrated, Vel said. Reeves wiped sweat from her forehead. Not really, sir. I just followed procedure. Procedure doesn't rewrite doctrine. She gave a small shrug. Maybe it should. Kresh studied her. How long have you been training, Lieutenant? Since I was 7. Started with basic situational drills. Movement, anticipation, nonverbal cues. My parents called it discipline. Back home, it's just what kids do. Kresh tilted her head. Training children for combat? For awareness, Reeves said. On Earth, that's the same thing. Vel's eyes flicked down at his tablet. We reviewed your environmental files. Earth's average mortality index per capita outpaces most war zones. Reeves met his gaze evenly. That's just weather and wildlife, sir. Just, Kresh echoed, almost laughing. You mean the constant threat shaped your entire species and you call it just? Reeves's expression softened. It's not threat. It's normal. You grow up knowing the ground can shake, the sky can fall, the sea can rise, and you keep living anyway. You learn patterns. You learn to move before something hits. Vel studied her quietly. And that's how you see combat? Combat's just another storm, Commander. You ride it or it kills you. He closed the tablet. The Council will demand we adapt our training protocols to your results. That's your call, sir. Ours is to keep surviving. By mid-shift, every instructor on base had received a copy of the sparring footage. Reactions ranged from disbelief to professional envy. In the instructor lounge, debates broke out. They see combat as probability, said one. That's not instinct, it's algorithmic behavior. Another countered. No, it's cultural conditioning. Survival is social reflex, Kresh entered, and silence fell. It's neither, she said. It's endurance made intelligent. Vel arrived moments later, drawing every gaze. Effective immediately, he announced. Human-style reflex conditioning will be added to all advanced training regimens. Cross-species participation is mandatory. An uproar followed. Objections about physiology, neural limits, ethical boundaries. Vel waited it out. This isn't favoritism, he said when the noise died. This is evolution in real time. You will adapt or you will be replaced by those who can. Kresh turned to him once the room emptied. You realize how much resistance this will provoke? Vel nodded. Change always provokes resistance, but none of us can ignore what we saw today. That evening, in the outdoor training yard, Reeves sat alone under the dim glow of the dome lights, wrapping her wrists in gauze. The ground smelled faintly of metal and ozone. Thex approached quietly, a water pack in one hand. For you, he said. Thanks, he sat across from her. I thought I understood strength, he said. I trained for 2 decades. But what you showed, there was no aggression. Only inevitability. Reeves smiled faintly. That's the trick. You don't fight to win. You fight because stopping means dying. Thex studied her. Your people must have lived through endless war. Not war, she said softly. Just Earth. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of distant training fields filling the gaps. After a moment, Thex asked, What happens when everyone learns to think like you? Reeves looked toward the stars beyond the dome. Then maybe nobody will have to. From the command deck above, Vel watched them. Kresh stood beside him, arms folded. You believe that? She asked. That no one will need to think like her? No, Vel said. But I believe they'll all try. He turned from the viewport. gaze falling on the row of new simulation chambers being installed along the perimeter. Each one calibrated to a human reaction baseline. Kresh followed his look. "You're remaking the academy." "No," Vel said. "The humans already did. We're just catching up." Outside, the training lights flared alive, 100 simulators warming up in synchronization. Across the compound, cadets of every species stepped inside their pods, preparing for the new reflex trials. In the control room, Vel activated the system override. "Begin calibration cycle." A voice over the intercom echoed through the halls. "New baseline established, human standard." Vel exhaled slowly, watching the data climb. Somewhere below, Reeves looked up at the same lights and smiled. Calm, confident, unaware that she had just changed how the galaxy defined readiness. For the first time in centuries, the Academy wasn't teaching tradition. It was learning instinct. The Academy's War Council chamber had never been so crowded. Dozens of senior officers filled the curved amphitheater, each species represented. Feathers, scales, crystalline matrices, and carapaces gleaming under sterile light. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, papered over with tension and disbelief. Commander Vel stood at the center podium, forearms folded neatly behind his back, his voice level but edged with exhaustion. 6 months ago, this institution functioned on doctrine 3 centuries old. Today that doctrine lies in pieces. The data speaks for itself. Holoscreens flickered to life around the chamber. Charts climbed at impossible angles, reaction scores, endurance, adaptability curves. Every line that once marked a ceiling now looked like a floor. Dr. Neal adjusted her fronds, their tips trembling from overstimulation. "Human inclusion has redefined our understanding of neurological potential," she said. "Their baseline readiness is not superior, it's adaptive. Their entire biology operates on a predictive defense model." From the rear of the hall, a Danthari colonel snapped, "And what happens when we force our cadets into that model? Burnout, neural collapse?" Neal faced him. "So far, injury rates have risen only 8%. Strain, not trauma. The brain resists change, but it learns, slowly." Kresh, positioned beside Vel, interjected, her tone sharp and pragmatic. "Resistance is irrelevant. Adaptation is mandatory. We've seen what stagnation costs. When one species redefines the standard, everyone either learns or becomes obsolete." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A crystalline officer flicked his hand toward the data. "You're suggesting we rebuild the entire academy around one species' neurology?" "That's madness." Vel's gaze swept across the room. "No, I'm suggesting we build around potential. Humans just proved what it looks like." The chamber quieted. Vel tapped a control. The screens changed, recordings from the new reflex trials. Cadets of every species faced holographic assault drills once deemed unwinnable. Now dozens were passing, their movements sharper, their hesitation gone. "This," Vel said, "is what happens when impossible becomes routine." In a smaller briefing chamber adjoining the hall, the core leadership gathered after the general session. Vel, Kresh, Dr. Neal, Instructor Harvick, and Colonel Morv, the political liaison from the conquered council. Morv's plating shimmered with controlled irritation. "Commander, you realize what you've unleashed? Every academy in the Concord is demanding access to these human protocols. Civilian sectors are already replicating them for labor training, for sports, for security forces, spreading faster than doctrine can regulate." Vel didn't flinch. "Knowledge spreads faster than law, Colonel. Always has." Morv's plating darkened. "And when half the Concord's population suffers stress disorders from trying to think like predators?" Neal interjected softly. "Then they'll finally understand the species they invited into their ranks." Kresh glanced toward her. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Neal said, "that the human way of thinking isn't a technique. It's survival engraved into consciousness. You can mimic it, but you can't undo what it costs." Harvick leaned forward, scarred hands clasped. "Cost or not, my cadets are evolving. I've trained for 40 years, and I've never seen progress like this. Entire platoons moving as one mind. Reflex, intent, instinct aligned." "Aligned with what?" Morv snapped. "With human aggression?" Harvick's voice was quiet but unyielding. "With human purpose." Vel raised one hand, silencing the room. "Enough, the numbers are clear. Retention dropped 12%, but proficiency increased 43%. Every species has improved beyond previous limits. We are not losing soldiers, we're refining them. Neil's fronds curled, at the risk of making them into something else entirely. Kresh's mandibles flexed, her tone cutting through the air. Something else is precisely what we need. The old system produced comfort. Comfort doesn't win wars. Vel turned to Morv. The Council will adapt or be left behind. We can't hide from this change. Morv exhaled a long metallic hiss. Change is one thing. Evolution by contagion is another. Later, in the observation deck overlooking the training grounds, Vel and Kresh stood in silence. Below, squads from mixed species units ran the human reflex course. A labyrinth of shifting threats and split-second timing. What had once broken even advanced candidates was now passable. Barely. Vel watched a Varanthian cadet stumble mid-course, recalibrate, and finish 5 seconds under qualifying time. 2 months ago, that would have been failure, he murmured. Kresh's antennae moved slowly. Now it's progress. They're learning, Vel said. Even the ones who thought they couldn't. Kresh's tone softened. Or they're breaking themselves to fit what they think we expect. Vel considered that. Perhaps both. A notification chimed on his wrist tablet. Subject Thex, Combat Evaluation Update. He opened it. The report showed massive improvement. The same Krenathi cadet who'd lost to Reeves now led his cohort by record margins. Look at this, Vel said, handing the display to Kresh. Her eyes widened. He's exceeded human standard timing by 3%. Vel nodded. He requested transfer to the human training unit after that sparring match. Said he wanted to understand fear the way they do. Kresh stared out at the field. And did he? He says he doesn't feel fear anymore, Vel said quietly. He feels anticipation. Dr. Neil joined them an hour later, visibly fatigued. The neurological data from Thex's unit confirms what I warned, she said. Cross-species exposure to human-style conditioning increases stress thresholds. The brain rewires to expect pressure. Vel didn't look away from the field. And performance? Up across the board. But I'm concerned, Kresh's tone softened slightly. About what? About how easily they're adapting, Neil said. This was supposed to be rare, exceptional. Instead, every species is accelerating. Kresh's mandibles clicked softly. That's what you call success, Doctor. Neil's fronds twitched. Success without understanding is danger. They're learning to survive like humans, without realizing what that survival means. Vel turned toward her. Then explain it to them. Write it into the curriculum. Make awareness part of adaptation, Neil sighed. You think awareness will stop it? Once they taste power, they'll chase it. Kresh gave a dry, humorless laugh. Welcome to civilization. That night, the council chamber lights dimmed for the final review session. The leadership remained, smaller, quieter, more focused. Vel projected the long-term simulation results across the central hollow field. Projected readiness gains, casualty reductions, doctrinal obsolescence timelines. The evidence was irrefutable. We are no longer measuring potential, Vel said. We are living it, Harvick leaned forward. And what happens when our enemies see these numbers? Kresh answered before Vel could. They'll try to copy them and fail, because they'll start with methods instead of mindset. Neil's voice cut through softly. Unless they start recruiting humans. Silence followed. Vel's secondary eyes blinked once. Then we ensure we train them first. Morv rose from her seat, tone laced with reluctant respect. Commander, whether the Council approves or not, history will remember this day. You turned doctrine into a museum exhibit. Vel looked up at the screen showing the Academy's motto. Discipline, unity, survival. He touched the control pad, adding a fourth word, adaptation. The new phrase glowed against the dark. Discipline kept us alive, he said quietly. Adaptation will keep us human, even for those who aren't. Outside, night settled over the Academy dome, but the training field stayed alive, bright, relentless, unending. Mixed squads ran drills under human instructors, moving in synchrony that looked unnatural but effective. From the observation tower, Reeves watched the newest cadets attempt the reflex gauntlet. They stumbled, fell, recovered, tried again. Behind her, Vel approached quietly. They'll pass eventually, Reeves said. They always do, Vel replied. That's what you taught us, She smiled faintly. Wasn't trying to teach. Just survive. Vel's expression softened. That might be the same thing. They watched the field together as dawn's pale light crept across the training grounds. The cadets below were still running. Alien shapes, human rhythms, sir, Reeves said softly. Do you ever wonder if this change was supposed to happen? Vel's voice carried the calm certainty of a man who had stopped questioning necessity. Evolution doesn't ask permission, Lieutenant. It just arrives. He turned toward the horizon where a new generation of cadets assembled, ready, alert, unblinking. Doctrine isn't collapsing, Vel said, almost to himself. It's molting. Reeves nodded slowly, watching the sunrise bleed through the dome. Then I guess we'd better keep shedding. The training horns blared across the complex, marking another day under new standards. For the first time in centuries, the Academy didn't echo with tradition. It pulsed with momentum. 6 months had reshaped the Academy into something unrecognizable. Where once cadets jogged through predictable drills and standardized evaluations, now every corridor pulsed with the rhythm of continuous motion. Alarms, holographic projections, reflex courses, everything calibrated to human standard. And the astonishing part wasn't that other species survived it. It was that they thrived. Commander Vel stood on the upper balcony of Training Field 7, the morning light glinting off the dome above. Below him, a squad of mixed-species cadets sprinted through the advanced reflex gauntlet. The air shimmered with holographic threats, sudden light bursts, projectile illusions, simulated detonations. Where older units would have broken formation, this one adapted like a living machine. Time, Vel said into his comm. 3 minutes, 38 seconds, came the automated reply. He allowed himself the faintest smile. 7 seconds under the qualifying threshold. A shadow approached from behind. You look proud, Commander, said Lieutenant Aria Reeves, her voice steady, hands clasped behind her back. Pride is inefficient, Vel replied. But I'll admit to satisfaction, Reeves smirked. That's practically the same thing. He gestured toward the squad finishing their run. 6 months ago, they could barely coordinate under dual-vector threat conditions. Now look at them. The group emerged from the simulation dome, gasping but upright. A Krenathi, a Peltheran, and 2 Morali cadets stood beside a Voranthian, who had just completed his first pass without error. They exchanged glances not as strangers, but as soldiers who had survived the same storm. Reeves tapped the data pad Vel handed her. Processing speed up 12%. Recovery time down 19. They're getting closer to our baseline. Vel folded his upper arms. Closer, not equal, Reeves shrugged. That's progress. Perfection's a myth. Perfection, Vel said quietly, was never the goal. Survival was. Later that afternoon, the senior staff convened in the renovated strategy chamber. The new table was circular now. No podium, no hierarchy. It was Reeves's idea, though she never took credit. Dr. Neal began the briefing, her sensory fronds twitching with barely contained excitement. The neuroadaptive data is conclusive. The reflex programs are triggering permanent cortical restructuring across species. Neural efficiency is up 22% on average. Colonel Morv, ever the bureaucrat, frowned. And the side effects? Fatigue in early weeks, Neal admitted. Minor cognitive dissonance during adaptation. But the long-term stability is remarkable. Instructor Kresh crossed her arms. Remarkable is one word. Frightening is another. You've seen what happens when these cadets get into unplanned simulations. Their instincts are rewriting themselves faster than they can understand. Reeves leaned forward. You're saying they're becoming unpredictable. I'm saying, Kresh replied, they're starting to think like you. The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was heavy. Vel broke it. That's the intent, isn't it? To think faster, act cleaner, anticipate outcomes instead of reacting to them? Neal nodded. Yes, but adaptation without cultural context can fracture identity. They're not human, Commander. They can't metabolize constant alertness the same way your species does. Reeves's tone stayed calm. Then we teach them control. It's not about tension, it's about readiness. Kresh looked at her. And if readiness becomes paranoia? Reeves hesitated before answering. Then we remind them it's not about fear. It's about refusing to freeze when fear arrives. Val tapped his fingers lightly against the table. Our cadets no longer freeze. That's progress worth the discomfort. Neal gave a slow nod. The discomfort is what creates growth. Every species has limits. You humans just convinced the rest of us that limits are negotiable. Evening descended in slow gradients of gold across the training dome. Reeves stood at the edge of the running fields, watching cadets sparring beneath artificial sunset. The drills had become poetry in motion. Each movement deliberate, no wasted gestures. Behind her, Thex, the Krenathi who had once challenged her, approached with his characteristic quiet confidence. He no longer moved like a warrior trying to dominate the fight. He moved like someone who understood it. "Lieutenant," he said, "you've created monsters." Reeves smiled faintly. "Not monsters, survivors." Thex considered that. Survival used to mean enduring. Now it feels like anticipating everything. "That's part of it," she said. "But don't mistake vigilance for living on edge. The trick isn't to stay afraid. It's to stay aware." Thex glanced at the cadets sparring. "We're starting to dream faster, too. I wake up already analyzing yesterday's mistakes." Reeves looked at him with something between pride and pity. "That's how it starts. Then one day you stop analyzing and just move." He nodded. "I'm learning. I know," she paused. "You're doing better than most humans did in their first trials. Because we're following your lead." "No," she said. "Because you decided to keep moving after it hurt." That night, Commander Vel called Reeves to the upper deck, overlooking the parade ground. A fresh intake of cadets, hundreds of recruits from 30 worlds, stood assembled in perfect lines. They were younger than most, nervous but eager. "They don't know," Vel said quietly. "They think this place is about competition." "It used to be," Reeves replied. Vel's secondary eyes blinked slowly. "You changed that." She shook her head. "No, Commander. We just stopped pretending war was tidy." He studied her expression for a long moment. "Do you realize what you've done to us, Lieutenant?" Reeves folded her arms. "I showed you what we already were. You just hadn't been forced to see it." Vel's tone softened. "You humans, you make survival look effortless. But Neil says it's a kind of pain, constant quiet pain that never turns off." Reeves didn't deny it. "She's not wrong. We just got used to it." Vel's gaze returned to the recruits below. "And if the others can't get used to it, then they'll find their own version," she said. "That's what evolution does. It personalizes survival." The commander's expression shifted into something that might have been pride, or perhaps weary awe. "You understand, Lieutenant, that none of this can be undone. The Academy will never be the same." "Good," Reeves said. "Stagnant things rot." When dawn broke the next morning, the parade grounds filled with the sound of synchronized footsteps. Mixed species squads trained side by side, every rhythm sharp, every reaction immediate. The drills no longer looked human, they looked universal. Dr. Neal watched from the observation dome, logging metrics with clinical precision. "Their neural synchronization patterns are harmonizing," she murmured. "They're beginning to share predictive cues subconsciously." Kresh stood beside her. "Shared instinct across species? That shouldn't be possible." Neal's fronds trembled. "It wasn't until now." Below, Reeves barked a single order. Every cadet froze, pivoted, and executed a maneuver that required total unity. For a heartbeat, the entire field seemed to breathe as one organism. Vel stepped forward beside the scientists. "What you're witnessing," he said softly, "isn't the collapse of doctrine. It's the birth of synergy." Kresh's voice was barely a whisper. "You've turned training into evolution." "Not I," Vel said. "We, and it's only beginning." That evening, the Academy quieted. Reeves walked the empty track alone, the distant stars mirrored on the polished floor. Her footsteps echoed in the silence until another joined them. Vel approached, hands clasped behind his back. "You never stop moving," he observed. "Habit," she said with a small smile. "We call it active rest." He looked out toward the endless horizon. "You've made us better, Lieutenant. But I sometimes wonder what happens when everyone becomes like you." Reeves thought for a moment. "Then maybe humans finally won't have to be." Vel glanced at her. "You think this ends with peace?" "I think it ends with understanding." They stood in silence, watching the stars beyond the dome shift through their courses. Somewhere in those distant systems, new academies were already installing human standard reflex programs. Vel exhaled slowly. "Do you believe we're ready for what comes next?" Reeves smiled faintly. No one ever is. That's the point. As she turned to leave, the commander's voice followed her. You've rewritten the meaning of training. She paused at the threshold. No, sir. We just reminded everyone what surviving looks like. The door closed behind her, leaving Vel alone with the hum of the night systems. Outside, the cadets kept running drills in silence, their movements synchronized with impossible precision. For the first time in recorded history, the Academy wasn't teaching soldiers how to fight. It was teaching civilizations how to endure,